Thing.
Here is the narrative script crafted for a YouTube drama storytelling format. It is designed for clear, deliberate narration with a focus on high-stakes tension and emotional payoff.
Feeling.
Where your entire life changes because of a decision you almost didn't make.
Vegan.
Talking about a split-second $80 purchase that ended up being the only thing standing between me and a total disaster. I was driving home on a Tuesday, just another exhausted evening after a long day of work.
Easy seconds.
Within 60 seconds, I was involved in a car accident that looked on paper like I had completely destroyed someone's life. A man jumped out of his car, screaming about his neck, acting like he'd been hit by a freight train.
Ishan.
A witness appeared out of nowhere to confirm every word he said. My insurance company told me my rates were about to triple because of a reckless driving claim. I thought I was done for. But here is the thing.
Concept.
I had a secret weapon stuck to my windshield that nobody, not the police, not the insurance adjusters, and definitely not the scammers knew about.
Faked.
This is the story of how a staged insurance fraud attempt turned into a criminal felony investigation. My name is Cole, and for the last few years, I've been living the life of a commercial roofing estimator in Columbus, Ohio.
Feel.
It's not a glamorous job, but it's steady. My boss, Ray, is a decent guy who values results over micromanagement, which works for me. I spend about 35,000 miles a year behind the wheel of my 2019 Honda Accord.
It's a reliable car, nothing flashy.
But it's my mobile office. My buddy Garrett had been bugging me for months to get a dash cam.
Figured.
He'd send me these Latinite links to crash compilation videos with the caption, "Bro, you drive way too much to not have one of these." I ignored him for months because I figured I was a good enough driver to avoid trouble.
Ichi.
I eventually bought a basic front-facing camera just to get him off my back. Garrett helped me wire it into the rearview mirror housing one Saturday, and I literally forgot it existed within 10 minutes.
Ventit.
It was just a piece of plastic recording a loop of the road that I never ever checked until that Tuesday in mid-March. ID spent the whole afternoon in Westerville dealing with a massive job site after a storm by
15. I was physically and mentally
drained. I texted my girlfriend Brooke, told her I was heading home, and merged onto the highway.
patient.
Traffic was heavy, that typical post-work sluggishness where everyone is just trying to get to their couch. I was cruising in the middle lane listening to a podcast about the Roman Empire completely on autopilot.
Well, that's when I saw the silver Nissan Altima.
This guy was weaving through traffic like he was in a movie, cutting people off with zero regard for safety. I remember thinking, man, this guy is going to get himself killed.
He tore past me.
Then slammed his car into my lane with absolutely no warning, cutting me off with maybe 2 car lengths to spare. Before my brain could even register the danger, his brake lights exploded into a solid blinding red.
Just slow down.
He performed a full-on deliberate brake check. It was a total stop in the middle of a moving highway. I slammed my own brakes, the abs grinding through the pedal, but physics wasn't on my side.
Famtu.
I slammed into the back of his Altima at about 20 miles an hour. The impact buckled my hood, shattered my grille, and sent coolant spraying across the asphalt.
Fingtien.
My heart was hammering against my ribs, and the silence that followed the crash felt heavy, almost suffocating. Reached over and turned off the podcast because the cheerful host's voice felt like an insult to the chaos I was now in. The driver of the Altima didn't waste a single second.
Thing.
He practically vaulted out of his car, grabbing his neck and stumbling toward my window like he'd just been hit by a freight train. He started screaming, "You idiot! You hit me! Look at what you've done to my car and my neck."
Felt my blood run cold.
I checked my mirrors, my hands shaking so hard I could barely undo my seatbelt. That's when the witness appeared.
Fissing.
A guy in a park suit on the shoulder just happened to be watching, and he walked over to tell the driver of the Altima, "I saw everything, man. He was tailgating you and slammed into you on purpose." It was a setup.
Hewitt.
I knew it, and suddenly they knew it too. But they had no idea about the little black box recording everything from my windshield. The police report was a nightmare.
Fingsham.
The Altima driver, A guy who introduced himself as Patrick played the victim perfectly. He was wincing, groaning, and demanding an ambulance. The witness stood by backing every lie with chilling confidence.
Time I got home that night.
My insurance app already had a note about an at-fault collision with injury. I didn't sleep a wink that Tuesday.
Spent the next 3 weeks in a haze of phone calls, threats from insurance adjusters,
And the looming fear that I'd be paying for this man's whiplash for the rest of my life. They were so arrogant.
Think,
Patrick even called me once, pretending to be concerned about his medical bills while actually fishing for a settlement offer. He told me, "Look, man, let's just handle this through insurance. Don't worry about the legal trouble yet."
he thought he had me cornered.
He thought he was going to walk away with a payout and a brand new car. But here is where the story shifts. I finally remembered the dash cam.
Vest.
I walked out to my totaled Honda, in the impound lot, popped the SD card out, and plugged it into my laptop. I sat there in my kitchen, watching the footage over and over again. The audio was the best part.
I heard the screech of my own tires, but
More importantly, I heard the Altima driver's engine revving as he pulled in front of me. I saw the clear gap where he could have kept driving, but chose to stomp on the brakes.
and the kicker. Dot.
I heard the witness and the victim talking, while they thought I was still dazed in the car. The witness said, "Did you get the angle right?" And Patrick laughed, saying, "Yeah." He never stood a chance.
The insurance company first.
I went straight to the police station. I walked in with the SD card and a file folder full of the notes I'd taken during those 3 miserable weeks.
Convinced.
When the officer watched the footage, his expression didn't change at first. But when he saw the two of them laughing and coordinating the lie, he stood up and walked out of the room to make a phone call.
Fallout was beautiful.
The police didn't just drop the claim, they launched a criminal investigation into insurance fraud. It turns out this wasn't Patrick's first rodeo.
Thing.
His license plate had been flagged in 3 other accidents in the Columbus area over the last year, but they hauled him and his witness friend in within 48 hours.
Field.
When I saw the news report on a local channel a few days later, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I didn't even know I was carrying. Justice doesn't always move fast, but when it lands hard.
Getting my deductible back.
My insurance rates didn't move an inch, and those two are currently facing felony charges for fraud and conspiracy.
Faked.
I still drive the same routes for work, and I still check my rearview mirror every 10 seconds. But now I drive with the peace of mind, knowing that the truth is always recording.
Phil texts me asking if I'm glad I bought that camera yet.
I don't think I'll ever be able to thank him enough. Sometimes the best investment you'll ever make isn't in a stock or a house.
Fanged.
It's in the evidence that keeps the truth alive when everything else is trying to bury you. The sound was sharp and slow, dragging through the air as if time itself had shattered.
Feared.
The podcast was still echoing through the speakers. Some guy was rambling about the Roman Empire or some forgotten history, but the normalcy of it felt like a sick joke.
Thing.
I reached over and killed the audio because listening to a lecture on aqueducts while my car was smoking felt wrong.
Yeah.
My Nissan Altima was wrecked, and this stranger was still talking about ancient ruins,
Hit the hazards.
and crawled toward the right shoulder, the rhythm of passing traffic sounding like a thundering sea. Other cars were weaving around us, some honkinga lovely soundtrack for the worst day of my life.
You.
He pulled over 2, maybe 30 feet ahead, his Honda Accord looking pristine compared to my crumpled hood. And then the show began.
Beijing.
The man who I'd later learn was named, Dominic, stepped out of his car and immediately clutched his neck with both hands. I mean, the second his boots touched the pavement, he was in character.
Vague.
He was wincing, sucking air through his teeth, tilting his head at an angle that looked like it would snap if the wind blew too hard. He moved with this exaggerated, theatrical stiffness, like his spine had been replaced with brittle glass. I walked up to him, my hands still trembling, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Hey man, are you okay?"
Fijian.
Trying to keep my voice. "Steady, sorry, you stopped so suddenly." I wanted to be decent, even though I knew the rule. If you hit someone from behind, you're usually the one holding the bag.
Me and ill.
Never forget. The expression on his face, it was so rehearsed, so clinical. Bro, my neck. He groaned, his voice dripping with fake agony. My neck is destroyed. I can't even turn it. You were moving way too fast.
Beanton.
I told him that wasn't true, that he had cut right into my lane and slammed his brakes, but he kept shaking his head. It was funny, really, how a man who couldn't turn his neck was shaking his head with such impressive mobility.
Phone. And dialed 911.
Right in front of me, telling the operator, ID, been driving like a maniac, easily doing 70.
You.
I was barely doing 52 in a clump of Saturday traffic, but sure, Dominic, whatever helps the performance.
You.
I called 911, right after him, keeping my voice calm, giving the dispatcher the mile marker, and telling them no one seemed critically injured. The operator was kind, but when she asked if I needed an ambulance, I declined.
PD.
My neck was a bit tight from the seatbelt, catching me, but I wasn't looking for a aid. While we waited, I watched Dominic put on a masterclass of manipulation.
You pace.
A few steps, grab his neck, lean against his accord with his eyes closed, as if he were on the brink of a faint.
Bean.
At one point, he sat on the guardrail and buried his face in his hands, and for a split second, I almost felt pity. Almost. Then out of the shadows, a witness appeared. He walked up from behind us on the Shadera guy in his late 20s, thin, wearing a gray hoodie, calling himself Vince.
You.
Hey, I saw the whole thing, he said, staring me down. I was right behind you. You were flying up on his bumper. You definitely caused this. I frowned, my mind fogged by the crash.
Visit.
Wait, I muttered. I didn't see anyone behind us. The lane was clear. But Vitz didn't waver, and I was too shaken to argue. He gave his info to Dominic, and as they exchanged numbers, the vibe shifted.
You weren't.
Acting like strangers, they were acting like business partners. Vince put a hand on Dominic's shoulder and whispered, "Don't worry, ill. Back you up." That phrase, "back you up," hit me harder than the collision.
Fixins.
10 minutes later, the police arrived, took statements, and Dominic put on his grand finale. The ambulance pulled up, and he was placed on a stretcher neck brace, and all carried away as if he were a war hero.
You.
The officer told me that since it was a rear-end collision, I was likely at fault, unless I had evidence to the contrary. I just nodded, handed over my insurance, and took the case number.
My car was towed and I had to take an Uber home.
The driver tried to chat, but I just gave onward answers, feeling guilty for my lack of manners. But I was empty.
Thing.
When I got home, Brooke knew immediately that the world had ended. I told her the basics, the crash, the whiplash, the witness. And she made me sit with a bag of frozen corn on my collarbone.
Thanked.
That night, I sat on the couch in the dark eating cold pasta, staring at the wall, replaying the sequence. The way he cut me off. The way Vince just appeared from nowhere. The back you up comment.
Something was rotten. Something was coordinated.
Then a sudden sharp chill raced down my spine, turning my blood to ice. The dash cam.
Hey.
My brother Garrett had insisted I get it to cheap 85 camera. Mounted to my far windshield, and I had completely forgotten. It was even there. I hadn't thought about it since the crash.
Camera had caught everything.
The sudden lane change, the lack of traffic behind me, the exchange between those two, I wasn't just safe. I was about to turn the tables.
Seize him.
I pulled the memory card out, my hands finally stopping their tremor, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. The next morning, I arrived at the insurance office, ready to show them the truth.
Beans.
When the agent looked at the footage, her jaw visibly tightened up. She saw the clear lane, the deliberate swerve, the lack of real impact force, and the high five Dominic and Vince exchanged when they thought the coast was clear.
Fraud investigations. Didn't take long.
A month later, I got the call that charges were being filed not against me, but against the dynamic duo.
Isn't.
Justice isn't always fast, but when it arrives, it tastes better than anything else in the world. I replaced my Altima, and every time I see a gray hoodie or a Honda Accord, I just smile. I'm the one who had the final word.
You.
The silence of the insurance adjuster's voice on the other end of the line felt like a cold blade against my throat.
Exit.
I was standing in the middle of a construction site in Hilliard, the wind whipping past my ears, holding a phone that felt like a ticking time bomb.
Fendon.
Linda the adjuster spoke with that detached mechanical professionalism that usually signals the end of a regular guy's financial sanity.
Floyd.
She calmly explained that Dominic, the man who had staged the most pathetic, overacted car wreck I'd ever witnessed, was now claiming permanent spinal damage.
He wasn't just asking for car repairs.
He was demanding a payout for lost wages, medical bills, and enough pain and suffering to retire early. Then she delivered the final blow.
Vince.
The random bystander had provided a sworn statement that I was speeding and tailgating like a reckless maniac, the man who had insisted on installing that tiny black box in my Nissan Altima months ago. He picked up on the first ring, his voice low and steady.
Things.
Everything. The fraud, the fake witness, the pathetic performance Dominic put on, and the fact that they were currently walking toward a massive insurance payout at my expense.
Peace.
Garrett didn't gloat, even though he had every right to say, "I told you so." Instead, he just whispered two words, the truth. I went to the tow yard that afternoon, the air smelling of oil and shattered dreams.
Fict.
My car looked like a crumpled accordion, the hood mangled and the bumper hanging by a plastic thread. But the cabin remained an untouched sanctuary. My heart hammered against my ribs as I reached for the windshield.
There it was.
The dash cam still bolted exactly where we'd mounted it 8 months prior. It looked like an alien artifact amidst the wreckage, but when I popped the SD card out with my thumbnail,
First.
I felt a surge of adrenaline that was almost intoxicating.
But.
Back at the office, I sat in the break room, the hum of the refrigerator, sounding like a stadium crowd waiting for the main event.
Fuel.
I slid the card into my laptop, my fingers trembling slightly as the footage bloomed onto the screen.
But.
The video was terrifyingly clear. It captured the silver Altima swerving through traffic like a shark hunting its prey.
Few.
There was no hesitation, no accidental merging. It was a surgical, calculated strike. The driver, Dominic, cut into my lane with zero clearance, then slammed his brakes hard, even though the road ahead was as empty as a desert highway.
Things.
I watched myself slam on the brakes, the hood of my car, dipping the impact, jarring the camera lens. But then the footage revealed the real rot.
Credit.
8 seconds after the dust settled, the dark blue Chevy Malibu appeared on the edge of the frame. It crawled slowly onto the shoulder, 50 feet back, and out stepped Vince.
Bet.
He didn't check on the victim immediately. He stood there watching, waiting for his cue to play the hero. I scrubbed back further into the timeline, and there it was.
Vegen.
The blue Malibu had been tailing the silver Altima for miles, maintaining a perfect synchronized distance. They weren't strangers. They were a coordinated predatory team, and they had just picked the wrong target.
Didn't go to the police. Yet.
I went to my insurance company's regional headquarters the next morning, carrying a thumb drive that felt like a loaded weapon. I asked to speak to a supervisor, not just an adjuster. Sat in a sterile white office and handed them the footage. The supervisors watched the video, once his face turning a shade of pale that let me know the game had changed.
Bing.
He didn't ask questions. He just made a phone call to the Hilliard Precinct and the State Fraud Investigation Unit. The tide had turned, but I wasn't done yet.
Vex.
I called Linda the adjuster and told her that I had a minor update for her file.
But.
I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. But when I told her to look at the link ID just emailed,
Bingding.
the silence on the other end lasted for a full minute. It wasn't just the crash, it was the coordinated behavior, the premeditation, and the sheer stupidity of doing it in 2026.
Few.
I found out later that they didn't just deny the claim. The investigators dug into the insurance records of every car registered to Dominic and Vince over the last 3 years.
Found a trail of 7 unfortunate accidents.
All involving the same pattern, all involving the same fake injury claims. 2 weeks later, I was sitting at home when the news alert hit my phone.
You may.
2 men in Hilliard had been arrested for felony insurance fraud and conspiracy to commit a crime.
Visit.
I looked at the booking photos. The man, who claimed his neck was shattered, was staring back at me with a look of pure, unadulterated terror. The judge didn't go easy on them.
Few. They didn't just lose their payout.
They were looking at years behind bars for orchestrated criminal enterprise. I walked out to my driveway, looking at the spot where my old Accord used to sit before the tow truck took it away.
It was just a car, a piece of metal and glass.
But it had captured the truth, and for once the little guy with the camera had actually won. Garrett texted me that evening. Justice is a dish best served in high definition.
From Frill.
I just smiled, closed my eyes, and finally, for the first time in weeks, I slept. The cold reality of the situation hit me like a physical blow when Linda, my insurance agent, laid it out in excruciating detail.
Beanzo.
She told me that according to the police report and the witness statement provided by that stranger at the scene, I was entirely at fault.
Fiction.
She claimed I had been tailgating, driving recklessly, and that the collision was a direct consequence of my own negligence.
Thing.
My insurance rates were going to skyrocket. She warned, and while she didn't give an exact figure, the words substantially echoed in my mind like a death sentence. Then came the kicker.
Dixie.
Dominic, the man in the Nissan Altima, was filing a claim ranging from $30,000 to $50,000, depending on his alleged medical bills,
$50,000.
for a staged fender bender that he had orchestrated with cold, calculated precision.
Thing. I sat.
In that rental car, in the Hilliard parking lot, the engine off, staring at the dashboard, for 5 solid minutes while my world threatened to collapse.
Ishing.
I spent 9 years with the same insurance company, never filing a single claim, maintaining a perfect driving record since I was 22.
Fashion.
Now, all of that history was being torched for a pathetic payday by a man who treated traffic like a demolition derby. I did the math.
This.
My premiums would double, my record would be stained, and I would be paying for his lifestyle for years to come. Suddenly, a strange, sharp smile crept across my face.
Fishy.
I remembered what was sitting on my laptop back at home. A silent, unblinking witness to the entire disaster. Linda, I interrupted her, my voice steady. For the first time that day, I have dashcam footage of the entire incident.
Thinks.
There was a pause on the linea, genuine stunned silence that lasted far longer than a normal breath. Then her tone shifted entirely as she asked if I could send it over immediately.
Feel.
I gave her my email, and within 5 minutes, the full unedited file was winging its way to her inbox. I included everything. The 2 minutes leading up to the crash, the deliberate lane change,
Usual. The brake slam with no traffic ahead.
and the suspicious familiarity between Dominic and Vince afterward. 2 hours later, Linda called me back, and she wasn't just doing her job anymore. She was on a mission.
Mr. Harris.
She began her voice professional yet heavy with intent. We need to involve our special investigations unit immediately,
Provided is significant.
she repeated. And I finally understood the power of that one word. Think about the irony for a second. There I was, Cole sitting at home, eating cold pasta.
Fully expecting my life to be ruined by a scammer who acted like he was in a soap opera.
Meanwhile, an $85 piece of plastic and glass was quietly holding the receipts that would blow their operation wide open.
Fiend.
Dominic had spent weeks setting up a $50,000 claim only to be outplayed by a device that costs less than a pair of decent running shoes. He thought he was a mastermind. He was actually just a man who got outsmarted by a bargain bin gadget. Over the next week and a half, the wheels of Speedus began to turn with a speed that shocked me.
Thorn.
The insurance company's special investigations unit didn't just look at my video, they dove into the deep, dark history of Dominic's life.
Thanks, sir.
I found out later from a detective named Wes that this wasn't Dominic's first rodeo. He had filed 3 similar injury claims in the last 4 years.
3 different cities.
3 different insurance companies, but the same tired, predictable playbook. Cut in front, slam the brakes, put on a performance, and collect the check.
Finally met Wes from the county fraud unit.
He was a man of few words, calm and methodical. He watched my footage on his desk monitor in complete silence, leaning back, only when the screen went black.
Fitted this.
He said. Pointing at the monitor is textbook staging. He explained the ecosystem of these fraud rings. The bull who drives the shill who poses as a witness.
Feel.
And the potential 4th member, the crooked doctor, waiting to sign off on fake reports.
Fudge.
Wes told me they had been tracking a pattern of these collisions for months, but could never prove coordination because it was always one driver's word against another. Until now.
Phew.
My dashcam footage was, according to Wes, the cleanest, most damning positive evidence they had seen in 18 months. A week later, the call came that made my day.
Feated.
Wes sounded almost excited, a rare feat for a fraud detective as he told me they had made their move. Both Dominic and Vince were in custody facing charges of insurance fraud conspiracy and filing false police reports.
The best part?
They had found text messages on Dominic's phone, coordinating the entire setup. "I'll be in the right lane you follow," in the Malibu, one read. Another said, "Remember, neck and back, not head."
Think Ted.
They literally had a script, complete with stage directions for which body parts to fake injuries on. It was like a dark, pathetic episode of a crime drama, only the stars were just two guys in an Altima and a Malibu.
Thingy.
Garrett, the buddy who forced me to buy that camera, that man deserves a steak dinner and a trophy for saving my life. The final update is simple. Dominic's claim was denied, rejected, and buried.
Wasn't.
Just served. It was delivered with absolute clarity. It is truly strange how a single mundane Tuesday can pivot into the most chaotic chapter of your life.
Phew. My name is Cole.
And if you had asked me a month ago if I believed in karma, I probably would have laughed it off as something people just say to feel better about a bad day.
Phew.
But now, looking at the stillness of my dashboard,
I know better.
everything changed on a Wednesday afternoon in Columbus, Ohio. I was driving my Honda Accord, just minding my own business,
Figs you not it.
cruising through traffic like any other regular person trying to get home to a quiet evening. Then, out of nowhere, it happened.
Thing sen.
A Nissan Altima. Can still see the dented hood and the chipped paint. In my mind, decided that my lane was the perfect place to play a game of insurance payday.
Fixed.
The driver, a guy named Dominic, slammed on his brakes so hard it felt like the world had stopped spinning. He didn't just stop, he orchestrated a collision that was so artificial. It felt like a scene out of a bad action movie.
Fruit.
I hit him, obviously, because there was no physics-defying way to avoid it. Then the performance began. Dominic climbed out of his car, grabbing his neck, groaning like he'd just been hit by a freight train,
Thinned.
while his buddy Vince sat in a blue Malibu nearby, acting as the director of this pathetic little play. They were so sure they had me.
Fed.
They were so sure that a random guy in an Accord was just another mark to be bled dry for a $50,000 claim. But they forgot one tiny crucial detail.
Uner.
Garrett, my best friend, had spent months nagging me, pestering me, literally forcing me to buy a dash cam. I thought it was a waste of $85 at the time. "Cole, get the camera," he'd say every time we grabbed a beer.
An investment in justice.
He liked to joke and, honestly, I thought he was being a cornball. Turns out that $85 gadget didn't just save my insurance rates. It effectively dismantled a criminal enterprise.
Fang tree.
When the police arrived, Dominic was still putting on his "I'm in so much pain" act. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just let the footage speak.
Fission.
The look on the officer's face when he saw the recording of Dominic literally lining up his car to force the impact. That was the first shift in the balance of power.
Victant.
The second shift came when they pulled Vince aside and found their phones full of text that basically confessed to the entire scheme. They had gift-wrapped their own prison sentences.
Phew.
Now, 3 weeks later, the final result is in. Dominic's claim wasn't just denied, it was completely thoroughly rejected. His insurance company dropped it and is facing multiple counts of felony insurance fraud.
Fisties.
Because, of course, they found 3 other accidents just like this. Jez looking at years behind bars.
Inda.
The insurance adjuster called me personally to apologize for the ordeal and told me my 9-year clean driving record was restored. She even mentioned that their fraud department wanted to send me a formal letter of thanks.
Fused on.
I didn't need the letter, though. Seeing my car, the Accord, back on the road was enough. The body shop had to do some work. The frame was a bit tweaked, but it drives again. Garrett, of course, hasn't stopped gloating.
Every time I see him.
He gives me that massive grin and says, "Told you so."
And the thing is, he was right.
I owe him more than just one beer for that. Sometimes at night, I still think about it. Think about the single moms, the retired folks, the people who work two jobs and don't have a dash cam to protect them. People like Dominic and Vince have been doing this for years, raising everyone's premiums, stealing from the honest people just to line their own pockets. That's what makes me truly angry. Not that they targeted me, but that they probably succeeded so many times before.
Thing.
I've since installed a rear-facing camera too. Garrett picked it out naturally. It's about peace of mind now. I went back to work and my boss Ray was a legend about the whole thing,
Giving me time off.
and even joking that I should start my own private investigation firm. The office calls me Detective Cole now, which is annoying, but I guess it beats being the guy who got scammed.
So here is the lesson for whatever it's worth.
If you drive, get a camera. Don't wait for a stuntman to decide. You're his next paycheck. It's a small investment that buys you something priceless. The truth.
For those wondering.
No, I didn't send Dominic a thank you card for being such a terrible criminal, though the thought did cross my mind once or twice.
Vepni.
Justice was served, and that's a much better ending than I ever could have hoped for.
Fusen.
Life is wild, and sometimes the smallest decision, like listening to a friend and buying a piece of tech, is the only thing standing between you and a total disaster.
Stay safe out there.
And for the love of everything, keep your eyes on the road.